All right. Well, thank you, both Chairman Barrett and Chairman McBroom, for allowing me a couple of minutes. It's important to me that you hear from a lot of folks who've been eager to talk with members of the legislature about this issue, so I will try to keep my comments brief. I'm the representative for the 76th House District, which includes the Home for Veterans, of course. And even before I took office in 2013, the residents of the home and their families had started reaching out to me for help. Around the same time that I took office, there were 144 state workers at the home who provided patient care services who were laid off. They were replaced with contract workers who earned a little more than minimum wage at the time, and it appeared immediately that there was evidence that we were getting what we paid for. After that switch, it did not take long for more complaints to start rolling in, specifically in regards to the resident care. And I think you heard some of that from our previous speakers, the ombudsman as well. I, along with some of my colleagues, made an unannounced visit to the home in 2013 so that we could hear directly from residents. And I know, Rep. Barrett, you've also done the same. Several veterans and staff members at that time were too intimidated to speak with us directly and feared retaliation. One even pulled us into a linen closet because they were concerned that other folks who would overhear what they had to say would, I don't really want to say retaliate, but not treat them well. Since then and throughout my time here, some have passed the word along to me through family members, through other residents, through volunteers that come and go from the home, through staff members. Some have reached out to me directly at coffee hours or asked to meet with me outside the home. And I've received a lot of phone calls and emails. So what I want to share with you today is a little bit of that experience and then a couple of things I'd like you to consider. What I heard then and what I have continued to hear has been very disturbing. The residents and their families told me about the understaffing and the problems with untrained workers, and I won't dwell on all of that because you've heard a lot of that, but I will tell you one story that really pulled on my heart. One worker nearly dropped a patient when transferring him between a bed and a wheelchair. And he was very embarrassed to admit to me that he was afraid. He was afraid when his caregivers were coming in because every time somebody walked in, he was worried that it would be somebody new again and that they wouldn't know how to use the equipment properly and that he would be hurt by being dropped. And because his caregivers were different, were different each time, he had to teach them how to take care of him and how to use that lift. And that should not happen. This man was once strong enough to defend our country, and we asked him to do it, and he did it. And now he's worried about something as basic as getting out of bed. Would you ever allow that kind of care for your own loved one? I know that I wouldn't, and I don't think that we should accept it for our veterans. As a result of many of these complaints, the state undertook a 2-year audit of the home, and the results of that audit were released, and most of you have seen those. You've heard about it in the press, certainly. That report amplified the alarming statements that I had been hearing all along, and it confirmed many of the problems noted in a previous audit completed in 2013, and that many of those persisted. You've heard a lot of the details, so I'm not going to dwell on that, but the understaffing, 81% of the time, problems using the fall alarms effectively, medications not dispensed as required, allegations of abuse and neglect not being investigated. The audit was so alarming that the Veterans Affairs Director resigned the day after the audit was released, and I applaud the changes in leadership, and I trust the new director, Judge Redford, as well as Ms. Shanlian, have been implementing positive and much-needed change. But frankly, changing a couple of folks does not take care of all the problems at the home. We as leaders of our state must also take action to both ensure that the quality of care at the home improves immediately, which I believe they are diligently working on, and that this situation never occurs again at the Grand Rapids Home for Veterans or any other facility or program for veterans in Michigan. To that end, I have introduced House Bill 5088, which would establish an ombudsman's office that would serve residents at the Grand Rapids home as well as the the D.J. Jacobetti Home for Veterans in Marquette. It would establish an impartial office that would answer to the legislature and not be beholden to anyone in the department. And as we heard in previous testimony, somebody who is an external person who can be objective. An ombudsman would be focused on finding solutions, and they would work closely with the home to correct and prevent problems from occurring again in the future. There's an ombudsman for children in our state, an ombudsman for the prisoners of our state. Shouldn't the veterans be afforded the same protections? Chairman Barrett, I appreciate it that you've expressed an interest in taking a look at the need for an ombudsman, and I urge you to request that House Bill 5088 be heard in your committee rather than in government operations. Secondly, I've introduced a resolution to extend subpoena power to the House Oversight and Ethics Committee, as well as the House Committee on Veterans Affairs. Looking forward is important, of course, and we are taking positive steps. However, in order to understand the concerns before you today and to implement the proper fixes, we must also ask the tough questions about what has happened in the past. I urge you, Chairman McBroom, to request the resolution, which was also referred to government operations, be heard in this committee and adopted so that you have all the tools at your disposal to get the answers that you need on behalf of our veterans. Our job as legislators is to serve the people that we represent and not to defend or hide any inappropriate actions of a department, a contractor, any one person in our state government whose duty is to care for our veterans. And the veterans and family members who have had to live with the results of the decisions that this legislature, our legislature in the state of Michigan, have made, they have a right to an explanation, and they have a right to have their questions and concerns heard. I would also like to encourage the committees meeting here today to hold a hearing at the Grand Rapids Home for Veterans. Many residents have requested that a hearing be held there because it's difficult for them to get around and it's expensive for them to travel to Lansing. They also have expressed to me that they feel it would help legislators understand their concerns better if we were to see the home firsthand. Chairman Barrett, you and I have talked about this, and I sincerely hope that you can make that happen. They deserve our attention, and this is something simple that we can do for them that will help communicate that we are indeed taking their concerns seriously. Finally, I would like this committee to really consider honestly whether or not the privatization of the direct care workers was the right decision for our veterans, and talk with the legislature and the governor's office about that. We saved money at the Grand Rapids Home for Veterans, but at what cost to women and men who bravely served us? Our veterans are counting on us to get this right, and we owe it to them to enact policies that will provide them with the best care possible because they deserve nothing less. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Representative Brinks. Chairman Barrett, any questions at this time? Vice Chair Rutledge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not altogether sure that that we have saved money there, but I respect your opinion that that was the goal. $4.1 million is the number I keep coming back to, and I saw somewhere where that has been requested to be augmented into the as a supplemental back. But the question I really want to understand, I read somewhere where I keep hearing that this was a home and is a home, and there was a time when family members could come in and share food, and somehow there was a license required to do that, and that license got taken away, and it didn't get reinstated. It was at a cost of $530 that the home would not pay for whatever this license is. Do you have any idea about? Are you the right person to ask this?
Well, I can certainly tell you what I know about that. So there was a license that was required that had not been in place for, I think, 11 years, something like that. They were out of compliance. And when that was discovered, instead of simply applying for the license, they shut the food service portion that served visitors to the home as well as volunteers or staff. They prevented them from being able to eat there because it didn't have the proper licensing for serving anybody outside of the residence. So that, I think, is just an illustration of how that problem was approached, is an illustration of a model of decision-making that was not about putting the residents' care first. They did have to go through some things, make some improvements, and reapply for that license. They did eventually get it. But in the meantime, residents were put in a difficult position where it was just a lot less, it was a lot harder for them to be able to share a meal with their family members who are visiting. So a family member could come in and take a resident out of the home and go get a meal at a local restaurant. But some of those guys are, I say guys, most of them are guys. There are women too, but many of the residents have mobility issues or are very sick, and family members come to visit at the end of life often, so it's very difficult to take them out of the facility. And this just made that one basic thing that helps people and families sometimes reconcile, sometimes just share a final meal with their family members or one of their final meals difficult. So it was just something that could have been solved in a much more patient-centric or member-centric way and was not. So it did not allow for that dignity. So, and it wasn't just a $500 problem. There were other issues too, but it sounded like that was going to be a barrier to helping them get something pretty simple accomplished.
Yeah, thank you, Representative. Representative Graves.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. I don't want to take all the time today, but Representative Brinks, thank you for your sincere comments, and I appreciate your passion on this issue. And as a veteran who uses the VA system and a former VA employee, I may have a little different perspective. I always thought, because I worked at different facilities on the benefits side, I always found that the best ran VA facilities were ones ran by veterans. The concept is real simple, veterans serving veterans. It works very well. The ones that, whether they're government employees or private sector, that aren't veterans, those do not work well. And that's my opinion, and I strongly believe that. So I appreciate the fact that, Representative Rutledge mentioned last week, I talked about the permanent ombudsman a couple years ago. Yeah. And he gave traction, so I obviously support your effort there, and I hope that happens. But I just want to make sure we have one chance to get this right, and that if we do replace employees, whether they're government employees or private sector, that they're veterans. Puts veterans to work, and veterans serving veterans is a much better formula for success. And I do think we have to be successful. So thank you, and let me know what I can do to help you.
Thank you for your willingness to help.
Thank you, Representative. Chairman Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative, and thank you for your work on this. And I am still committed to coming out to the home for a hearing. That is something that I intend to do, that we've discussed before and discussed with other members that when I was out at the home, in fact. We want to listen to them because it's our obligation to do that. It's our responsibility, and it's one of the fundamental things that we can do is hear from the residents directly. I did want to ask you specifically, though, I think in your recommendation for an independent ombudsman, which I support that concept, I think the funding for that comes out of the DMVA budget in your bill, if I'm not mistaken. And I almost wonder if it would be more appropriate to put that funding in an independent part of state government, separate from the DMVA, perhaps. I don't know if you've given that any thought, but it would truly make that then one step further removed as an independent person, not even funded by the same department that they're kind of having an oversight or advocacy role within. And just offer that as a thought, perhaps.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that thought. I certainly don't want to take resources away from, where they're needed most if it's going to come out of care. And an important element of this is the objectivity. So it should not be a fox watching the hen house, so to speak, right? We need to make sure that we have somebody who is external and is not worried about maybe the reputation of their department or the home or anything like that. So I appreciate your concerns, and frankly, I wasn't really very concerned about exactly where the money came from. Mostly I was focused on
Yeah,
making
I'm
sure
just
we're
offering that
addressing the care
as
issues.
a thought that as an independent, they may be
Yes.
better suited being out of licensing or another, licensing and regulatory affairs or another department
Right.
altogether.
Very open to that.
perhaps. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Barrett. Seeing no further questions from members, did you have one? Yes, please. Okay, well, you got to. I missed it, sorry. Representative Kosowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since our last hearing last week, I just can't get this out of my mind. It's just something I just can't get my hands around. And kind of the question I have, because I really agree with what your bill states and what it does, and I really appreciate the chairman of our board, Mr. Barrett, for being outgoing and talking to us about this and really trying to fix it. But my problem is I can't get my hands around how this happened, first of all. But I guess my question to you is, because you're there, is there a lot of family members that come and see? Is it like a small percentage? Because I keep thinking that if there's all these veterans there and they're having family members, that I would just imagine these family members would go crazy. So I didn't know if there weren't a lot of visitors. It doesn't seem like this was like spoken a lot about. And maybe I'm wrong, but is it like a few people coming in?
There are folks who are there regularly as staff members and volunteers, and residents, and those are the folks that I've heard from the most. A few family members, but you have to remember there are only 2 veterans homes for these guys in the entire state. So one is in the UP and one is here. So many family members live very far away, so it's difficult for them to come. We also have a lot of folks that through various difficulties throughout their life, some because of their experiences in combat, have been estranged from their family members and don't have a great support system of external folks who come to see them regularly. So those are a couple of factors that might influence that too. But just certainly want to ensure that we have continuously received feedback from people who visiting there with a lot of concerns. You heard the ombudsman's folks from that office say this morning that these are not new concerns. If you talk to any television reporter in Grand Rapids who's worked there for the last 15 years or so, they will say these issues come up regularly. We've tried to get to the bottom of it. It's kind of discouraging because it's a perennial problem, and so we kind of quit asking. So it's not a new thing. It didn't just start happening with the privatization of care. It worsened then in some cases, but there have been issues going back to previous audits that are long before any of us were here. So it does require significant change from the inside in terms of the whole approach there and what they do, how they do it, the whole attitude. So to that extent, we've got a big job in front of us, and Judge Redford, if he speaks, can attest to that. So, yeah.
Thank you, Representative. One more question, Representative Pagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative Brinks, for your leadership on this issue. My question and concern has to deal with the Board of Managers, and just wanted to hear your perspective and any experience you may have interacting with them, and how long they have been tasked with the oversight of this veterans home, and if any changes have been made in the Board of Managers position so far.
There are some folks who have better knowledge of exactly the details of who's been there, how long, and what their responsibility has been. So you can ask that of Judge Redford as well, I believe. But in my experience, the Board of Managers means well, but has not necessarily exercised the oversight necessary. And that's about as much as I can say with confidence without, I don't want to get anybody...
Well,
I don't want to speak ill of anybody.
I think if I may,
Yeah.
Representative, if I may, I think you bring up a great point, Representative Pagan, and you brought it up last week too, and I think something that would be helpful for us, and perhaps LSB staff or someone can help us by getting us a copy of the law that establishes that body, and then we can actually see what their specific tasks are
Right.
in law.
That'd be extremely helpful, Mr. Chairman. Yes,
That's-
thank you.
That's a great
and-
point, and
Thank you.
we'll make sure that happens.
Right, and that's one of the reasons I really would like to see you exercise all the tools available to you as an oversight committee so that you can ask all the right questions and figure out where responsibility does lie for some of the things that have happened for two reasons. One, because people deserve to know the truth, and the residents and their family members they have questions, and they should have a right to ask those and have those answered. But I don't think that we can improve all the things that need to be improved at the home without understanding how we got here. And so those understanding where the responsibility and sort of where the authority to do things that need to be done lies, we need to have that conversation. So I encourage you both to continue in that and do that for the good of those who are counting on us.
Thank you very
you.
much, Representative.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for testifying today,
Thank you.
Representative Brinks.